Welcome to the Baseball Insiders. We have Roki Sasaki finalists. When will we have a Roki Sasaki deal? We will be going live until that is announced. No, we won't. But please join us today to talk through the final three, the Padres, the Dodgers, and the Blue Jays. Does anybody have an edge here? And how did the Blue Jays get involved? Plus, the more information that you've been waiting for on the Jeff Hoffman situation from our own Robert Murray. We're going to bring on a guest today as well. Eric Cole, Fansided Zone, will be here talking about the top 5 prospects who've been traded already this offseason, plus the international market. And then we will get to your questions. Eric is a prospect guru. I am excited to have him on the show. We'll bring him in a little bit. But until then, Robert Murray, welcome to the show. Welcome to the madness.
Oh, well, yeah, it's good to be here with the madness. Cooper has awoken from his slumber. He is moving around behind me like you wouldn't believe. We got lots to talk about here with Roki Sasaki. We got lots to talk about with Jeff Hoffman. I've got all the details there, and I can alleviate some of the Blue Jays fans' concerns there about his physical and everything there. Got lots of other stuff to talk about. Excited to talk to Eric Cole. Shall be a good time. But Adam, pleasure to be here with you. How you doing? What's new? What's the latest?
I am doing well. I'm looking at myself on camera. I fully expect someone to say that I look tired, but you know what? All good. Maybe I am. We've had a fun week so far. We will be back live again on Friday, 3:30 Eastern, to wrap up the week with another Baseball Insiders. We also have been seeing the love lately. People have been shouting out the show online. Know that we see you. We appreciate it. We hope you keep watching. Again, 3 shows a week. Come to the YouTube channel. Hit subscribe. If you aren't, hit join if you want to learn more. Join our Discord. We've got the all-star level and the rumor mill tier. If you are an all-star, that involves private Q&As with Robert. That involves priority in the chat. So if you've got questions, we'll get to your questions first if you are an all-star member. So we'd love to see you there. Also, subscribe to The Moonshot. That is Fansided's weekly baseball email newsletter, where the MLB team, including Robert Murray, right there on the screen, will break down all the biggest stories in the big leagues with humor, insight, and behind the scenes info. So if you're not there, if you're not in the Discord, if you're not on our YouTube channel, or if you're not subscribed and rating us on all podcast platforms, where are you? We would love to see you. And we are inclusive of all 30 teams, unlike Roki Sasaki, who has narrowed it down to 3. And he did the fun thing that I enjoy, where he did start the process by eliminating teams rather than announcing the teams that had made it. We got word leaking slowly. The Giants were first boot, like the loser on Survivor who spills the rice and starts crying at Tribal Council. And just as I was making fun of them for being first out and saying, well, glad the Yankees aren't first out this time like they were for Ohtani, Yankees were second out. Pretty sick. Good job by the Yankees. Then it started flowing. By the end of the day, we were down to the Padres, Dodgers, and Blue Jays, who, hey, we've heard a lot about Ohtani or Sasaki West Coast bias, right? Maybe it's always been the Padres or Dodgers. Maybe he wants to land on the West Coast. Well, the Blue Jays have, it seems, made the best pitch to him for any of those non-West Coast teams and gave him the most tangible vision of the future of anybody that didn't have the blessing of being located on the West Coast. So being a finalist even seems like a pretty big deal for the Jays here. But I'll open up the floor to you. Let me know what you're hearing, what you think about these 3 teams, and maybe even a timeline for when we can hopefully get closer to a decision.
Yeah, as far as the Sasaki sweepstakes go, we've always thought on this podcast, and there's a lot of other people who have shared this opinion as well, that it would ultimately come down to the Dodgers and the Padres. And the fact that they're included in this comes as no surprise. And the Dodgers, they've been incredibly motivated to upgrade their team in any way possible. That's come with trades. It's come through big spending in free agency, and now it's coming in the international market. And they're trying to do. I mean, they got Yamamoto last year, and they're trying hard for Sasaki this year. They've met with him yesterday, and they had star players involved in the meeting there, and they are trying their best to convince Sasaki to be the latest star player to come to LA. But they have plenty of competition, and I think when it's all said and done, their biggest competition is going to be the San Diego Padres. The Padres, they have been very quiet all offseason, but the one consistent thing that's been the case with them is that they are motivated for Sasaki. They want the player, and when AJ Preller wants a player, he does anything possible to go and get that guy. I would not discount the Padres by any means here. They are a prime suitor, in my opinion, and my guess, even from the start and to even now, is it comes down to the Dodgers and Padres. And the Blue Jays' involvement in this kind of caught me off guard. I didn't know that they were as serious as they were in the Sasaki sweepstakes as they evidently are. But by all accounts, they left that meeting with Sasaki in Toronto. They felt confident and they felt encouraged by how it went. And he would obviously be a tremendous fit in Toronto. He would headline the rotation for years to come. He would be a long-term building block in that franchise that really right now lacks long-term building blocks. It makes all the sense in the world to me for Toronto. I think they're on the outside looking in as we speak. But the thing is, and I think it's the case with everybody here, is information is incredibly hard to come by. It is Joel Wolf, his agent. He has held a couple different press conferences where he's like shared, what he can share, but he's kept a lot of this under wraps. And teams involved, people involved, are even asking me like, "What are you hearing?" And it's pretty unique. Kind of reminds me of Yamamoto last year, which he was also represented by Joel Wolf. But there's a lot of people who do not know exactly which way he's leaning, which leaves this free agency a pretty big mystery.
And we've gotten this question a few times, in MLB Deadline News just asked it as a follow. We know that obviously these three teams in the finals are scrounging for international money. We've seen the Dodgers lose a few big names to the Pirates and the Twins already. The Padres are asking some people to reclassify their commitments to next year. You could theoretically obtain extra international money by making small trades. There was even, I think, an Eric Longenhagen rumor yesterday that Jose DePaula might get traded for a big chunk of international money. That was kind of a wild thing to absorb. But anything you're hearing about potential moves from these three finalists to get even more gobs of money to add to that pile and maybe potentially tip the scales in one direction or another?
I wouldn't be surprised if that ultimately ended up happening, where some team ended up trading a prospect or one of those prospects to get international money. That being said, I don't know of anything imminent there by any means, but it makes a lot of sense. It also sounds like something that Preller would do. You would also think Friedman would do that as well. But I can't say I've heard anything like that's imminent there. It doesn't mean nothing is. That doesn't mean that something isn't imminent, but I just haven't heard of anything there.
We'll obviously keep everyone posted. And today is the first day. I was getting a little worried something might leak ahead of January 15th, but didn't. All we know is the finalists. Today is the first day where we could theoretically get some real tangible news here. The 23rd is when the signing period ends. The expectation, of course, is that the deal will fall into that gap. So we'll keep everyone posted. Maybe we even know something by Friday's show. We welcome your questions on it, though. We'll continue to hopefully address it and answer it. We saw Sasaki in Padres gear. We saw Sasaki meeting with the Dodgers stars. I mean, it's going down to the wire here. He threw in Toronto as well, and they sold him a vision. And again, only non-West Coast finalist. Clearly, he connected to whatever the Blue Jays were selling him. That is beneficial, not only for Sasaki and this chase, but going forward. They have a sales pitch that got the attention of the most coveted international free agent pitcher, or at least on the low dollar, among the amateurs, among the people who didn't have the Yamamoto money coming their way, clearly captured his attention. And I want to keep our attention on Toronto real quick because they did bring in Jeff Hoffman, and the Jeff Hoffman situation unfurled like a really complicated encyclopedia over the past couple of days. There's an Orioles deal that got scuttled. There's a Braves deal that got scuttled. Braves deal seems super long. You have all of the information on what led to Hoffman choosing Toronto, or at least the two parties landing together. So I know we've gotten a lot of questions about this. We will continue to. Any more clarity you can provide on how this all went down?
Yeah, I've spent the last few days reporting on this and talking to a lot of different people involved in the Jeff Hoffman sweepstakes here. And this is the timeline of events, and I hope I can calm down Blue Jays' fans' nerves, because I've seen a lot of different tweets like being worried after I reported about the Orioles physical being flagged. And it started with Atlanta. He originally had a 5-year deal for about $48 million in place with Atlanta. He took the physical, and they ended up flagging it. They did not fail it, but they flagged it. And Atlanta continued to try to sign Hoffman. They originally signed him as a starting pitcher, but they wanted to sign him for a lesser dollar value. Ultimately, they did not end up coming to terms, and he ended up agreeing to a 3-year, $40 million deal with the Baltimore Orioles. And Baltimore flagged his physical as well. They attempted to sign him to a lesser dollar value. It ultimately did not work. He went to Toronto. He after that he ended up agreeing to a deal with Toronto. Obviously ended up signing there, and he is going to be in Toronto for the next 3 seasons. But what I can confidently say is that even after Atlanta flagged his physical, even after Baltimore flagged his physical, they attempted to sign him. There was other teams involved in Hoffman, even after he ended up getting flagged for his physical with Baltimore, who were aware of like what was going on behind the scenes. They continue to try to sign him. So it's not just a case of like, he does not have a chronic shoulder issue. It is nothing to my knowledge that's serious. To my knowledge, Jeff Hoffman believes he's fine. There's people around Jeff Hoffman who believes he's fine. Toronto clearly believes he's fine because they did not flag his physical. But even after these teams had concerns about his shoulder, they attempted to sign him, which to me signals that this is not a chronic thing. It's not something to worry about long-term or even short-term. And we should put these to bed, because I've seen the Blue Jays get a lot of flack for this on Twitter from, a lot of different people around baseball, just in terms of on Twitter. It was not deserved, and I want to put those to bed.
And clearly, again, whether the Blue Jays flagged the same issue or not, all of the previous teams that had come into contact with these Hoffman MRIs and X-rays and medical forms decided that they still did want him, and they just found perhaps an opportunity to save a little money. Disingenuous, maybe, who knows? But he does go to Toronto, helps that bullpen tremendously as the Blue Jays continue to focus on other pursuits. And we know that because they're finalists for Roki Sasaki. So good week to be a Blue Jays fan, even after a very difficult start to the offseason. But speaking of one of the other teams in the Hoffman mix, the Atlanta Braves, the first club to come to a tentative agreement with Hoffman. We have a Braves guy here hanging out. He's also a prospect guy here to talk us through the top 5 names you should know of prospects who were traded already this offseason. Plus, if you got questions about the international market and today's shuffling, drop them in now. Let us know. Eric Cole is here. Eric, thank you for joining us.
Hey, guys. Really appreciate you guys having me on.
No, for sure, dude. We're thrilled to have you.
Yes, pumped to have you on. Eric's got his corner here. And today's segment, I did want to touch specifically on prospects who've changed hands this offseason already, the names to know if you don't know them. Winter meetings, there was action. The Boston Red Sox probably have surrendered the most name-checked package so far of any team that has made a high-profile move. But yeah, we're going to have you on to give us groupings of prospect, give us updates throughout the season, keep everyone informed on who's hot, who may be cooling off. And I thought this would be a fun way to get us started. So which 5 names do you have your eye on in terms of players who've already changed hands?
It is funny that you mentioned the Garrett Crochet trade, because there are 2 names in particular that jump out to me when thinking about this. This offseason's been kind of strange that even though there's been a lot of trades, it's been a lot of minor trades like, prospect swaps. There's been a little bit of international money that's moved around, a lot of cash considerations type trades. Not a lot of big names, which has been a little bit disappointing, but it's also still pretty early. And there's been some markets that I think have been kind of, held up by certain guys that are still free agents, to where maybe some deals that normally would have gotten done just haven't yet because of the presence of other options. But speaking of the Garrett Crochet trades, I do have 2 names from there. I think there's an argument for 3 or maybe even 4 names from this trade to be on this list, although I think that might be a bit of a stretch. The first is Kyle Teal. I think he's one of the best, if not the best, catching prospects in baseball. He's number 25 prospect overall by both MLB Pipeline and Baseball America. First round pick out of the University of Virginia. That makes Adam happy. And he's frankly a guy that shouldn't have gotten to Boston in the first round in the first place. This is a guy who probably should have been a top 10 pick, fell to the Red Sox and they scooped him up. Again, he does everything that you want a catching prospect to do. He moves well behind the plate, controls the running game, and he's just really gotten a lot better at calling games now that he's a professional and he's not having a pitching coach basically tell him what to do, or even just another coach at the college level. In addition to that, he also has a plus hit tool and will probably end up hitting 20 home runs a season, which seems pretty good to get from a catcher, considering some of the guys that guys are running out there right now. He's already at AAA, and given the White Sox current situation, I wouldn't be surprised at all if he ends up in the majors sometime this year. I don't think Matt Tyson the crew that's over there at the White Sox is going to be blocking him anytime soon. The other is Braden Montgomery. I thought he had a really decent shot of going number 1 overall in 2024, but then he broke his ankle. Then there was like, well, how bad is the injury? Is he going to fall, to the bottom of the first round? But he ended up going number 12 overall to Boston, and he's already a top 100 prospect, despite not taking a single plate appearance as a professional baseball player. It's at least plus raw power from both sides of the plate, kind of advanced feel for hitting along with it. And if you like, similar to me, if you like seeing a guy like with an absolute howitzer in the outfield, throwing guys out at home or throwing guys out at third like Ichiro used to, this is your guy. He has an absolute cannon out there. Again, he does have a serious ankle injury, and we haven't seen him actually hit against professionals, so that does matter. But I think that for this guy, there's all-star level upside. The next name I think will be a little bit controversial, but I know it's the one that's close to Adam and I's heart, is Caleb Durbin. I was genuinely surprised that the Yankees were willing to include him in the Devin Williams trade. I thought he was going to be playing in the infield for the Yankees this year. Again, this is a case where I think a couple of teams have made mistakes with Caleb Durbin, including my Braves, who drafted him for basically next to nothing out of a small, tiny college program. And part of the reason why is that he's 5'6", doesn't have a ton of power, and it's a weird skill set, but it's really, really good. And I think he's going to end up being a really good player. The bat-to-ball skills with this guy are insane. He doesn't strike out. The entirety of his college career, the entirety of it, he struck out 10 times. That does not happen. I don't care what level you're at. I don't care if Aaron Judge was down there up against playing, the Troy State whatevers. He would still strike out more than that.
Oh, he sure would have. Yeah.
And I also think that while he's a small build, he's stronger than he's given credit for. He can really run, and he likes to run. Again, the bat-to-ball skills are great. So he's a good defender, and he's a utility guy. He can play all over the field. He's going to a great organization for him in the Brewers, who will use him all over the place and really kind of take advantage of every part of his skill set. I know that Pat Murphy's already kind of been talking him up. I like Devin Williams. I think that the Yankees are going to be happy to have him closing out games versus some of the other things that were happening to them late in games last year. Hat tip to Adam for his constant meltdowns for when, Clay Holmes was doing Clay Holmes things. But I think that the Yankees probably should have found a way to try to hang on to him in that trade, and getting Durbin and Nestor Cortez for 1 year of Devin Williams was a no-brainer to me.
Yeah, I also want to cut you off there for a second. So
sure.
I have a question for you. Is when Durbin was traded to Milwaukee, my instant thought was this can end up being a Dustin Pedroia kind of guy for the Brewers, and I've even heard some comps for that from people inside the Brewers. I'm curious, what do you think of that?
I could see it happening. The skill set is similar. Pedroia could still hit for some power. I don't think he gets quite as much, credit. I mean, again, small man that can do a lot of things on a baseball field in a gritty sort of way. Absolutely, that definitely fits the comp. Again, it's a lofty comp because Durbin was also dinged up last year, had to deal with a wrist injury among other things. I don't want to necessarily put that on a guy, but at the same time, the same type of player, just a gamer who plays hard, a lot of energy. And he doesn't look like the type until you see him on the field, and then he realized that this guy can really play.
And nobody hated Dustin Pedroia as an active player more than me. Nobody wanted a Yankees version of Dustin Pedroia more than me. That guy was incredible. And it looks like he's going to be safe on the Hall of Fame ballot for next year as well, which is good because I think he deserves another look or another 5 looks. But yeah, you can't help but see Pedroia and Durbin at least a little bit. What are the other 2 names that you want to focus on?
Sure. The Kyle Tucker trade is the other big trade of the offseason, and it would be kind of silly to not include the centerpiece of that trade to me. Cam Smith is a really, really fun prospect. Obviously, Paredes is kind of the Alex Bregman replacement once those negotiations fell through. But Cam Smith's the reason why this deal got done. He was a first-round pick out of Florida State, but again, kind of a mid-round guy. Didn't get the same press as some of the guys at the top of the draft, especially when you have guys like Charlie Condon hitting the ball 450 feet every game in college. But he might end up being the best player from that draft. And wouldn't be shocking if that happens. One, his first look at pro ball, he already posted an OPS over 1,000. That seems pretty good. Really hits the ball hard. If he hits the ball, can get under the ball more and kind of get to his power more. This is a guy that can hit 30-plus home runs in the big leagues. This is also a guy that could just be the long-term Alex Bregman replacement, period. Paredes is a nice player, but you can kind of play him over in multiple spots, whereas Cam Smith, assuming that he can kind of stay agile enough, he'll be able to stay at third base. The power is going to play there. He can just do a lot of things really well at the bat. And if he slows down and you don't really want him, in the dirt, you can put him in a corner outfield spot and just hope he matches 30, 35 home runs a year. And the talent is there to be that guy. He just has to keep doing what he's doing, and he looked really good in his first look at pro ball. The last one was a kind of a tough choice for me, but I went with a Chedry Vargas, who was in the Jake Berger trade, which is not exactly the name that trade you expect to hear in this particular list. But he wasn't even the highest ranked Rangers prospect in that trade. There was another guy ranked ahead of him, but I think this is the guy that is going to end up making this trade look really good for the Marlins down the road. Well, at least until they end up trading him for some, just for some salary relief.
Yeah, way down the road. It depends how far down the road you're trying to get.
Yeah. First year of arbitration when he actually starts making real money. He's only 19 years old, and he's probably going to end up being a second baseman in the big leagues if he gets there. But I see 20/20 upside with this kid. It's a weird swing, a lot of moving pieces, but he just has a knack for putting the barrel on the ball and getting the most out of the tools that he's got and getting the ball over the fence. Again, he's young, and he's going to have to kind of keep hitting in that 280 range with that weird swing of his against more advanced pitchers for me to be completely sold on him. But I'm not going to be surprised at all if Miami got a steal here. And again, assuming they can actually hang on to him for any appreciable amount of time. So those are my 5. It was a tough list. There's some other guys, especially a couple from the Garrett Crochet trade that there's certainly an argument to be put in this spot, but those are the 5 that I came up with.
I love the list. I do not love the Marlins because of what they do to the people that they accept and then churn out. But I love the fit. Love to hear it. Eric, thank you so much for joining. I'm going to feed one question your way. We did have somebody ask about the Yankees farm and specifically George Lombard Jr. And you and I have talked about Lombard a little bit. So I'm curious as to your thoughts here. He snuck his way into the very end of BP's top 101 prospects this week. I don't know if that'll make you feel, the Yankees got 2 names on the top 101, one at the very back. Oh, great, epic. But Lombard does seem like a potential breakout candidate. MLB execs showed him some love. They named him a top 3 defensive prospect in baseball last week, I believe, although Carson Williams got nearly 50% of the vote there as the top name. So we can't all be Carson Williams. But thoughts on Lombard's potential for this year and whether the bat ever matches the glove and the speed?
Yeah, the problem with Lombard Jr., there's a few things going for him, right? One, he comes from a baseball family. That certainly does help. He kind of understands how to prepare to be a pro and to go about his business of preparing to be a professional hitter. And I think he's going to stick at shortstop. I don't think that is a given. It just comes down to whether or not he'll get to an offensive profile that is good enough. And he's kind of a sum of all of his parts type offensive player. Not without necessarily a standout tool that makes me go, this is what's going to kind of get him to the big leagues as a hitter. So it's kind of this year's going to be big for him in terms of, is he going to hit for enough power, kind of get to enough speed to kind of piece it all together? Because there's guys like we've seen that do this. There's Alex Bregman was kind of like, the masher of one draft class, but then there was Dansby Swanson who kind of did a lot of things, but pretty well and ended up putting together a nice career for himself. And I don't know if he gets there. But at the same time, you have to like the bloodlines. You have to like the kind of already being a really great defender will solve a lot of crimes. We've seen some truly bad hitters in baseball just slotted in at the number 9 spot because they can really defend. I could see that being the case for Lombard, even as kind of a floor type situation. But I'm not at all discouraged by his bat, but he's certainly not a surefire offensive hit threat.
You heard it here first from Eric. George Lombard's ceiling is Jason Nix. No, he did not say that, but I maybe said that. Eric, thank you for joining us. Really appreciate it. And we will see Eric again soon. Other segments to come this offseason and into the season when the minor league season begins. We'll get you updates we can from the field. Eric, thank you for joining.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, Robert, that was A, super fun, and B, it is now time to empty the notebook and answer some questions before today's show ends. And before, again, we'll be back here Friday at 3:30 Eastern as normal. So you can find us a couple days from now. Maybe things will have changed. But for now, anything you got in the notebook, I know right before the show you tweeted about Randall Grichuk. So anything you want to touch on here?
Yeah, Randall Grichuk, his camp recently had a conversation with the San Francisco Giants. And there are a number of teams that are showing interest in Randall Grichuk right now. And he makes sense for a lot of these teams that are looking for an option that can improve their outfield, but also not break the bank. Because I wouldn't imagine he's going to end up getting like a high AAV by any means. And that's why you look at teams like the Pirates that are involved in this. They've also shown interest in Alex Verdugo. So they're considering a number of different options. And to my knowledge, are considering more than just those 2. But Grichuk makes a lot of sense. He's coming off of a season. He had almost 300 and 102 games last year with the Diamondbacks. It was a pretty valuable piece there. I would look for him to maybe pick a team in the not so distant future. So we'll see. But the rest of it, I'm kind of just waiting for Sasaki. That's a lot of what a lot of baseball people are telling me right now is they're just waiting for the Sasaki news, and we'll just then go from there. So that is currently what I've got right now. And Cooper is being an absolute menace over here. I can confidently add that to the notebook as well. So I apologize for that, but Cooper is he is not asleep, unlike Drew.
Yeah, I see the open door and I'm like, did Cooper kick that open? Like, you never know. I know Biscuits, you'll hear some pawing, scratching, and you'll be like, did I close that door 100% of the way, or is it open? It's open. Cool. Biscuit's in another room. Very awesome. Good job by Biscuit. Gonna get to a few questions before we sign off. Obviously, Sasaki dominating the airwaves, but there was a little door opening a crack for Alex Bregman and a short-term deal yesterday. It was Bruce Levine of the Cubs beat who brought up, hey, there have been some preliminary discussions. That has led to Johnny asking about the Cubs being in on Bregman, and I've seen Bregman a few times mentioned in the chat. So, hey, if we're getting to short-term high AAV land, I'm going to throw the New York Yankees in there too. They're not going to do it until they trade Marcus Stroman, but that's something you got to consider if this is the world that we live in. Any clarity on maybe a timeline there? If you can feel Bregman's camp getting antsy. Bregman's camp, of course, is Scott Boras. They're never antsy. But thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because that was going to be the first thing out of my mouth, is that Bregman is represented by Scott Boras. And if we've learned anything about Scott Boras in recent off seasons, he does not get antsy. He is very willing to wait out the market and try to extract the most value that he possibly can. And as far as the timeline goes, I don't even think Boras knows that at this point. It's just we're in a wait and see mode. The Tigers have been involved. There's been other teams that have been involved. The Red Sox have been mentioned there. And I think Ken Rosenthal made a really good point on Foul Territory the other day that he thinks the Red Sox are just waiting for Bregman to kind of come to them, because, I mean, he doesn't see Bregman wanting to go, or he's skeptical about Bregman wanting to go to Detroit. And maybe that's a thing. I don't know, but that's Ken's speculation. And I thought it made sense. And I mean, the Red Sox are obviously a historic franchise and have a lot of history. They have the Alex Cora connection. They're not that far from contending. I mean, obviously you can say a lot of those same things about Detroit, but Boston is a big time organization. But as far as the type of contract we could be looking at, I think a short-term contract could make a lot of sense here. And we've already seen that being mentioned with Pete Alonso, Anthony Santander, Jack Flaherty being open to a short-term deal. So we'll see what exactly ends up happening in there. But I think a short-term contract for Bregman, which would allow him to reach free agency possibly as early as next offseason, should certainly be in play. So I wouldn't rule that out, but for now we wait, and I think we'll be waiting for a little bit longer for sure.
We could end up doing Alex Bregman's free agency to Electric Boogaloo next offseason. And speaking of next offseason, Daniel Walsh has a question, and there was an Andy Martino article that just dropped that I know we've talked a little bit about right before this podcast about, hey, no aggregation here, nothing to speak of really. Teams check in on players all the time, but the Mets have already called the Blue Jays just to sort of check in on Vlad Guerrero Jr. The possibility of the Jays trading him before the season feels like below zero. It feels like the temperature in Buffalo for this weekend's Ravens-Bills game. But obviously the Mets doing the legwork there. So any thoughts on, obviously not going to happen now, but hey, at least the Mets are sort of laying the groundwork for maybe moving in on Vlad Jr. at some point if things change.
Yeah, I would be flat out stunned if the Blue Jays considered trading Vlad Jr. now. I know I joked about it last year. Cooper is making his presence known once again. But I would indeed, I would eat my own Discord message. I would eat the screenshot of this right here if the Blue Jays traded Vlad Jr. between now and opening day. You can hold me accountable to that. I would indeed do it. So quote me on that. I do not see a scenario in which the Blue Jays trade Vlad Jr. before the season starts. But it makes all the sense in the world for the Mets to try to lay the groundwork here to try to see what it would take. Maybe this also ends up signaling that they'll be involved in him next free agency, which, I mean, that would make sense. I mean, he's a generational talent. You compare him with Juan Soto, and you have the makings, like a long-term building blocks there that few teams could end up matching. So I think it makes a lot of sense. But if I was a Mets fan, I would not get your hopes up there at all for a trade to happen between now and opening day. Maybe mid-season if the Blue Jays really end up falling out of it. But no, I think we could put that to bed. And Fabian Ardaya is joking with me in my text messages right now. Fabian, I appreciate you watching, but you're a mean friend right now for what you just texted me.
If Vlad Jr. gets traded before the season, I will eat the wires that connect us to the internet that allow us to live stream. I'll just be eating wires. So how about that? Bets on. We're raising the stakes. It's International Signing Day, Robert. Quick, name all the international free agents in order of their bonus money. Go. No, let's. We're good. Shout out to the Mets, who obviously made noise today with Ilian Pena and his $5 million super bonus. That guy seems legit. Hopefully, we will know more coming in the coming days about Sasaki and about some of the fallout. If other names change hands, if there are other names to keep an eye on, we will keep everybody posted on Friday afternoon. Maybe we'll pop on sooner if we do see some movement. But Robert, thank you for helping out today, clarifying, and shout out to Eric Cole as well for dropping off his prospect knowledge. We're going to have Eric on, like we said, to answer questions about prospects, update you on where they're sliding up or down as the year goes on between releases of top 100 lists and all that stuff. So very fun day. And Robert, thank you for helping shepherd us with all this information.
No, for sure. I appreciate you, Adam. Everyone in the comments appreciate you. Eric Cole, I appreciate you switching things up a little bit. And Joanne, our lovely producer, we appreciate you. Lots of good talk today. And yeah, let's do it again on Friday. And Cooper says hello.
Cooper is very clearly saying hello. Shout out to Cooper, obviously. Again, join us in the Discord if you haven't. We'd love to see you there. Hit subscribe. We just passed 3,000 today. I believe during the show, someone was our 3,000 subscriber. So shout out to you, Bangers and Mash. Delicious. Thank you for doing that. We will be back Friday, 3:30 Eastern, updating you on everything that changes between now and then. And as you know, even in the slow off season, it seems to be a lot between every episode. We got a lot of new stuff. We get reloaded with rumors, and we talk about all that we can. So appreciate everybody joining us today. We'll be right back here, 3:30 Eastern on Friday. Take care.
Thank you, everybody.